Work with aversive stimuli in the platform involves experientially representing and interacting with virtual versions of concrete things, or abstract concepts or feelings, that the participant finds unpleasant and has avoidant or phobic responses to. How treatment will progress will be dependent on the participant's needs, the style of therapy used, and the guide's direction. But let's consider some of the options when working with the example of a phobia. Following the initial intake process and suitability checks, and often some imaginal work to help clarify and complete initial work with the phobic stimuli, the participant and guide can enter the virtual consultancy room. Having defined what aspects of the phobia are most salient, they can spend some time discussing what scenarios might be most helpful to run in the experience room. This makes the process a co-creative one and is itself a form of imaginal engagement, which is typically beneficial in its own right. For those with more severe phobias, it may then be helpful to use the space between the consultancy room couch and the door to the experience room to allow for incremental steps to be taken, with room to pause, process, and bring in psychoeducation as needed. When appropriate, the experience room can then be entered. The experience room may already be populated with relevant stimuli, a social setting, a stage facing an audience, the top floor of a skyscraper. Or it may be entirely empty, depending on which protocols are used. With a driving phobia, for example, it may be the car itself that needs to be represented, or perhaps the presence of other motorists. Or it may be more environmental, a particularly enclosed space, an open one, or one where a lot is going on, leading to sensory overload. Simple geometric shapes can be used in a choice of color or texture to represent the interior or exterior of vehicles in the space and their proximity to one another. Or, taking another less literal approach, an underlying feeling such as fear could be reified or represented in an object that can be worked with symbolically. The drawing tools can be used to capture finer details and to provide flexibility and quick visualization. 3D objects, such as a more photorealistic virtual car, can be brought into the space from the database of assets. Videos of roadways or other relevant content can be loaded, or immersive scenes selected for greater immersion. In some cases, guided engagement with a specific object will be suitable, as in the case of traditional exposure therapy. In other cases, such as work with PTSD, the narrative may be particularly important, and more emphasis placed on the flow between events or the changing spatial location of objects over time. The three-dimensional quality of the space gives the participant and guide the opportunity to achieve a great deal relationally. Above and beyond what is represented in the space, how close or far away from it the participant positions themselves, how big or small the assets are scaled, and where they are in relation to each other, are all central factors in how the scenario is experienced and can lead to the creation of a strong sense of agency. Platform safeguards prevent phobic objects from being scaled up or otherwise modified beyond certain agreed-upon limits, and objects are approved by the guide before becoming visible to the participant. There is room to pause and to reflect at any point, to clear content, and to leave the experience room and return to the safe base of the consultancy room whenever needed. After experiential work is completed, the participant and guide return to the consultancy room for a debrief, following which they exit the virtual space.